Hi everyone, hope you're all doing well, and today we're going to talk about EHang stock, which had a big massive jump yesterday. The stock went up nearly 50%, and in general it's been on a very good month through the month of December and January, and we're going to be taking a look at this opportunity and if it's a good opportunity to go buy this stock. So if you could smash the like button, and that'd be absolutely amazing. But EHang, now this company is special. It is going to be one of the biggest sectors that this company is in at the moment, and one of the big things that I always hear on the stock market is when there's a new hot stock, people say, oh, this is the next Tesla, or it could be like Tesla. Whereas EHang actually is potentially the next Tesla. It is going into probably one of the biggest growing sectors in the next decade, I believe. So we'll take a look, and I'll be talking if this is a good opportunity to go buy this one. So today I spent a good 2 hours looking into EHang. I've listened to an interview of the CFO on YouTube, which was a very good interview. I've read the Q3, I've read the investor relations, I've read quite a few articles on them, I've looked into the financials, and I'm going to share that all with you right now. The only thing I'm yet to do is actually listen to the conference call, which I'll probably do at some point when either I'm driving to work or I go for a run. Sometimes I listen to some conference calls there. So yeah, it'll be one of those when I do get around to it. It's something I will definitely do, because you sometimes pick a few little gems up there, but the information that I've got from a lot of these things that I've looked into are pretty fantastic, and I'll share that all with you today. I'll share you with the good growth plan it has in place. I'll also touch on the risks. I think it's only fair that even if I talk about a company that I do like, I also talk about the risks, so we'll take a look. So let's talk about the company. Drones. Basically, we're going to be looking at drones that are able to carry passengers, and we'll also be looking at drones that are able to deliver parcels. Those are the key things that EHang are going to produce. So we can see here that the current TAM for the market that EHang's going for is 1.5 trillion by 2040, which is definitely a big, massive growth sector. Now, when we look back into the tens that have just been and moving into the next decade, what will the tens be known for? Well, I think the 10s are always going to be known for the rise of EVs and Tesla. I think the 10s were Tesla's year, and you look at how much they developed through the decade and how strong they finished it. Tesla was a game changer. Transport always has some up cycles every kind of decade, and something always takes the next big milestone. And I think Tesla was making EVs cool. Before Tesla made EVs cool with, really good range, the looks are pretty good. And they were just generally cool, Teslas, and it made a big, surge in EVs, and we're seeing that with a lot of SPACs. But they were the game changers for EVs. They made EVs cool. Before that, it was, they weren't cool. We were relying on cars that were like the Nissan Leafs, which were ugly, did about 20 miles, and then you had to go charge it up. And yeah, sorry if you do own a Nissan Leaf, but the dreadful cars, and they just weren't cool. Tesla's changed that. I think the 10s will, in the transport, will go down as the electric vehicles and the Tesla, and that will carry on through this decade. But I think the big change has happened in this decade. And when I think what's the next change that we can make in the next 10 years in the 20s decade, I think it's going to be drones, and I think it's going to be passenger drones and also logistic drones. Those are going to be the game changers. I think the other thing is obviously autonomous cars. I think that could be one of the big things as well. So I think those are the two things that are really going to take the 20s, but I think the standout thing will be, obviously, imagine getting into a drone and going to where you want to go. I think that will be the big massive change in the next decade. So to get some sort of play in here is obviously a high risk, but it could be very high reward. Just like if you were buying Tesla at the start of 2010, you look at them prices now and you're like, it was high risk, there was a lot of up and downs, but by the end of the decade, you'd made such a good return. And I think EHang is very similar in the position that it's in. So these are currently the vehicles that autonomous aerial vehicles that EHang makes. So we've got the three passenger AAVs, and this is what EHang call them. And EHang has the 216, which is the 2 seats, the Firefighting, which we'll kind of touch on in a little bit, and also the EHang 1 seat. And then there's also some passenger, non-passenger logistic vehicles that they're building as well. Obviously there's the logistic side, there's also some other industries they're looking to go into, but they won't be as big as I believe like the passenger and the logistic side, but we will mention them because it is worth mentioning that they are going for more than just a single market. So these are the vehicles they make. They are actually in production. With regards to the logistics side, I think that will be the market that will be the big growth really over the next 2-3 years. I think logistics through drones will be a lot easier to get approved. I think China have just allowed it this year. I think we'll start seeing a few more other countries that start allowing logistic drones, and also with the logistic drones they actually have a deal with DHL, which is a big massive deal, so hopefully they would take that international, and other companies will try to get on that stream as well. I know Amazon are actually developing their own drones for the logistics side of it. I know that China are always like the first of the game, and we're a bit slower on the western side of it of allowing these things. And the drones are a little bit, people are still wary about them. We only have to look at like the disruption that when the drone was flying near Heathrow Airport like a few years ago, and like shutting it down every day. They can cause problems, and it is the regulation side of it. I think the non-passenger logistics should go through pretty easy. When we go into the passenger side of it, I think this is a massive growth area. I've got to say the risks are the regulations, allowing these things to happen. They are developing a control center which basically allows these drones to go from one like helipad to another helipad, and they charge in the electric, which is really economical. So that's all fine from that point of view. I think it's just the actual regulations about allowing these drones to fly and the paths to take and how they're monitored. And it only takes, this is the high risk part of it, like hoping them regulations come through and they allow these to happen. And if one thing was to happen with these drones and there was some sort of crash or anything that would cause a problem with this sort of thing, and the whole network will get shut down. That's something to be careful of, and that's what I've always said about Virgin Galactic. But they do seem to be proven very reliable on the tests, and there's been many tests, and I think it won't be, when we listen to the interview with the CFO, it seems like there will be a lot of these passenger drones starting to get allowed very soon, and then he said he does expect them to be allowed a little bit more in Europe in the next kind of 2 years, and there's a few test flights going on as well in Europe. I think Denmark's one of the big countries at the moment allowing these test flights to happen, so it'd be really interesting, because I think when we do see a few starting to allow these, I think the rest will follow suit. It's just like who's going to start allowing these first. I think the only little thing, the problem with this one is the regulation side of it, but you can imagine like autonomous drones that allow you to get across the city, that would take a normal 50-minute journey. You do it in 20 minutes using these drones, and they all have pretty decent speed. They're all pretty good at like the amount of flight time they can have as well. It'll be a massive game changer, so it's very interesting from that point of view. Now the great thing about this is, like I say, we've got an actual product here. We've got a product doing test flights, and when I get into a new hot space, I like getting the leader. Just like how when I got into the EV market, I bought Tesla. The leader always has the great advantage of being the first to market, which means they normally take a good chunk early on, which EHang should do. It's worth noting that Boeing, Airbus, Uber, there's a few other companies that are trying to get in this area. They all go quite a little bit quiet for a while, so I mean, I don't know if that's a good sign or a bad sign. Next thing we know, they might come out with something, or it might just means they're giving up. But some of the other designs that I've seen have been nowhere like as sleek looking as the EHang. Like some of them look horrible. They look like a fire extinguisher that's flying around, but EHangs actually look really attractive, which I think is the key thing to put in there. So in terms of where the potential could go, I've spoke really quickly there about the logistics and the passenger transportation, but also you could use it for aerial sightseeing. So I think this could come a really attractive thing as well, because you think that if it's sightseeing, it'll be probably a lot more easier to get permission rather than flying over the city. So I think that might be one of the first things that do get allowed a little bit more. I know this is starting to get used in a few places around the world. That is actually starting to get allowed a little bit more. There's also the use of aerial logistics for offshore cargo. There's also the emergency medical transportation, rather than getting something through the city, which causes, pain, you just fly over the city, gets there quicker. Transplant organ, obviously that will get to the patient a lot quicker. Flying ambulances, and also this is another area that they're looking at going at is aerial firefighting. So where high-rise fires, especially this is something in China, if a high-rise fire happens, it's a nightmare for the firefighters to get up there and get to that where the fire is. But if we have actual aerial drones that are able to get up there and put the fire out, there's a video of this actually in operation, which is pretty impressive, and that's another market that they can go for. So there's a lot of different ways they can go for. There's a few methods they put on in the earnings part, but I think those were probably the most key ones to look into. So there's definitely a few revenue streams where even if passenger drones don't get allowed, like emergency use will be very good. I think logistics will happen for sure. But yeah, it's pretty impressive. Now this is in the investor relations. They actually just built a factory to help with the capacity and high demand. So this is one of the new factories they built. It's to start production in the first half of the year 2021, and it's going to build a capacity of 600 units of these passenger drones. And it's also supported by the US government, which is really good to know. So they're a big fan of it. It's worth saying, I think these passenger drones do sell for like 300,000, so they will make very good money on these drones when they do start selling a whole bulk of them and they start coming out of this factory. And that's where you'll probably see a big jump in the revenue start to happen in a few years' time. So that's a very good thing to know that the infrastructure is in place on this company. So overall, I think when you take it into the risks, that the regulation side is the only thing standing in this company's way really. Apart from that, it's the market leader. Yeah, it's a little bit high risk, but when you look at what potential this will have for even the logistics to the passenger drones, it could be the next big growth sector in the next 10 years, and that makes me very interested in this company, because you look at what they're developing and it's pretty impressive. And when we look at the financials in a second, that'll be pretty impressive as well. So we'll have a look on the financial side of it. So EHang had a great day, up 53% today, dropping a little bit in after hours, gone to $61. The market cap is 3.3 billion, which is a little high. That's something just to be a little aware of. It has had a fantastic jump over the last kind of 2 months really. The stock's up like 300%, so that's something to just be a little bit careful of, that it has been on a good run, and that's sometimes something that I do avoid when trying to look at buying companies. The ticker symbol for this one is EH. Now when we look at the company, revenue's grown a little bit as they've kind of sold 1 or 2 more drones. Obviously when we get the factory open, you'll be able to see there's going to be a lot bigger jump in the revenue and the profit. Now the CFO, when I listened to him, he said that profit probably won't come for 1 to 2 years. So I do believe these figures are slightly wrong. So I don't think I think they'll be focused on revenue growth personally. So I don't think they'll get to this sort of profitability that it's showing, but I do think revenue could be somewhere around the range that these analysts are offering. Now when we look at what the revenue they're going to go to, like over the next 2 years, the company's actually going to grow revenue at a big amount. And when we start working out the actual value of this company, it's actually not too bad. Obviously you're paying up for a little bit of growth. From what I can work out, you're pretty much paying up about 2 years worth of growth. But when you compare that to other companies, you do have to pay up for growth companies. That's the thing. 2 years is a little bit. It's not too bad value, but I like buying undervalued. So that's something to be careful of. I don't mind paying up for a little bit of growth, but 2 years is a little bit. But when you consider the market size and where this company could go, this company's going to put in some decent revenue, but it's going to probably put even more in after this. When you start talking a bit further down the line and more countries allow it, and they get more factories up and running, it could be kind of crazy. So the growth looks very attractive from that point of view. And when we look at the balance sheet isn't too bad either. There's a little bit of debt on there. There's quite a lot of cash on there. With the cash they're burning through, they've still got quite a few years. They might tend to raise a little bit of capital if they want to build a few more factories, probably do that by a share offering. So everything on the balance sheet is pretty attractive. It's pretty healthy. It's not burning through huge amounts, and I think, like I say, the CFO says about 1 to 2 years off profitability. So I don't think it'll have to burn through so much cash. I do think it'll still raise some cash, but at the same time, at least we've got profitability in sight. So it's pretty healthy from that point of view. And from an insider point of view, it's pretty healthy as well. The CEO actually owns the majority of the stake inside the company, which is always a positive sign. The CEO is also the founder, which is also a bonus. Currently own a 42% stake, which is pretty impressive. So I like that, because then it's always in the best interest for the owner to do well, because he has a lot of money tied up in there. The CFO also has a good stake in the company. I would say that when it's a hot stock in China, one thing I like to see is someone like a Tencent, for example, or JD or Alibaba. I like seeing they hold a stake in this sort of company, which they currently don't have. Maybe just because it's kind of just such a new company. Maybe we'll see that over the next kind of 12 months. Something that I also think is like sometimes ARK tend to buy this disruptive company. I know they're looking at a space ETF, so maybe if that was to set up, then maybe we would see EHang go into that index or that ETF. So that's something to bear in mind. So that could be something that I would like to see, but is something that could happen over the next 12 months. So I thought I'd just let you know on that situation. That could be a little bit of a catalyst as well over the next 12 months, and it would be something that I would expect to happen if there was to have that ARK ETF, and also if this was a decent company, I would expect one of those Chinese giants to take a little stake in it as well. So overall, I'm a big fan of this company. The growth is absolutely fantastic. You think about how much growth sector there will be when they get that factory operating and bringing some units out. We're talking about probably the biggest space in the next decade, which is scary. You know, we are talking Tesla 2.0 here. So it's very interesting, and it does make sense to have some sort of play in here. And like I said, the next Tesla potentially. The growth, we know the growth, you know, if we get the logistics side of it with drones, even if we have passengers, drone service, you know, you can imagine how much that would take off if that is allowed with all the regulations. The risks, like I say, the risk is the regulations and getting that allowed. I think that eventually we probably will get to the point where we see at least some regulations being allowed for drones. If it starts off in like just doing tours and sightseeing use, then that might happen. But I also think that eventually, if it is proven to be safe enough, we will see, unmanned passenger service of drones come into the cities, and how they design it with the helipads and getting an app and getting a drone and getting you to fly across, and using the highways that they've developed in the skies that the drones will fly on. I think it's pretty impressive, and if it is found successful, then I think it will see it come into a lot of major cities. So there is a few risks here. It is a high risk stock. So from my point of view, I think it is really attractive play. I like what it's going after. I think the space could be huge for this company. And yeah, I generally do think this could be Tesla 2.0 in the next decade. The valuation side of it, and I understand when you're thinking, you know, but look at the growth potential, you know, just pay up for it now. But I think there is some sort of element of like, it has been on a very good run. It is a $3 billion company, and I think the revenue that it will put in is you know, it's still not going to be a huge amount, but there is a lot of growth potential there. So I am attracted to this company. I would rate it a buy. I personally do want to probably buy this company at some point. I think at $60 is definitely way too much for me. I think if I can get this company around the $30 mark, I would be very happy. This stock is very volatile, and it will move you know, double digits is a normal day for this company, like going up 10% or coming down 10%. So I do think, you know, if we do have 2 or 3 bad days in the stock market, this could drop down there. We'll see what happens. At the same time, it could go kind of crazy. So yeah, I mean, there's a bit part of me that if it does go to $40, I might just nibble, so I have got some exposure there, and then see what happens. So I just think right now at the price it is, it has been on a very good run, especially today. So I will wait for a pullback, but it's one that's on my watch list. It's one that I'm very interested in getting into, and at the right prices, EHang, I think it is a fantastic company with a lot of potential. So yeah, hope you enjoyed it. It's one that's been on my watch list for a while, and I finally got around to covering it, so hopefully it was useful. And like I say, if you could smash the like button, if you are new, subscribe, that'd be absolutely amazing. And I'll see you in the next video.